scattered islands collide on Earth, a power of the planet in an hour. Now, the angle for Bitesize Daily is Motivational Monday on BBC Two, with Gethin Jones.
This is Bitesize Daily, and we've got you covered. Hello everybody, I'm Gethin Jones, and if you need a bit of encouragement to get your school books out today, you've come to the right place. Joining us every day, we've got top experts and amazing celebs to help bring your schoolwork to life. So let's get down to business. If you're aged 11 and 12, you're up first, so stick around. Then it's all about our fabulous 12 and 13-year-olds. And finally, we're finishing the show with our awesome 13 and 14-year-olds. Here's what's coming up on today's show. First subject for each group is maths with the marvellous Miss Hussain. Then our super celebrities are back with more fantastic instalments in The Big Read. For English, we have our supreme English teacher, Miss Lonsdale. And wrapping up each age group, we'll be finishing things off with a touch of history. To you 11 and 12-year-olds, you're up first, so don't go anywhere. Let's get the show on the road. I hope that's got you motivated and raring to go, because first up today, it's maths. And to get us started, we've got a very special guest. She's Queen of Protractors and our teaching expert for the day. It's the marvellous Miss Hussain. You got a fanfare. Did you get a fanfare at school?
No.
I knew you were going to say that too. What's it all about today, Miss Hussain?
Maths today is all about angles.
It's all about the angles. So before we make a start, let's check out some of the key things you might want to know about angles. We'll see you on the flip side.
Types of angles. An angle is a measure of the space between two lines, called legs, that begin at the same point. They are measured in a unit called a degree, which is written using this symbol. There are 4 types of angles. Acute angles measure less than 90 degrees. Right angles measure exactly 90 degrees, always marked with a square. Obtuse angles measure more than 90 but less than 180 degrees. Angles that measure exactly 180 degrees form a straight line. And reflex angles measure more than 180 but less than 360 degrees.
OK, let's get straight into it. What do we do first, Miss Hussain?
We are going to start by looking at 4 types of angles.
4 types of angles, OK. Remind us what they are.
OK, first up, acute angles. These are less than 90 degrees. Secondly, the right angle, which is exactly 90 degrees. Thirdly, the obtuse angle, which is greater than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees.
What part of the deck chair is the obtuse angle there?
Well, in this case, the obtuse angle would be the chair bit, because that's more than 90 degrees but less than 180.
OK, and our final angle?
The reflex angle, which is greater than 180 and less than 360.
And what part of the pie is the reflex angle?
Well, that would be the large part.
I was hoping you said that. I like pie, so that would be my bit of the pie for sure. OK, I think the only way to check that we've got this knowledge is to put it to the test. And you know by now that I love a quiz. Can we do a quiz, Mrs. Hussain?
OK, it's going to be a very quick quiz on just 2 of these angles.
Just 2? OK,
yes.
I'll take it because it's a quiz. I hope you're ready at home as well. Off you go.
From the 4 angles we've spoken about, what type of angle is an angle of 45 degrees?
OK, 45 degrees, obviously less than 90 degrees, so that to me is an acute angle.
Correct, well done. It's a 45-degree angle, which is less than 90, so it's an acute angle.
All right then, next question.
What about an angle that is 177 degrees?
177 is between 90 and 180, so that is the deck chair, obtuse.
Well done, that's right. It's an obtuse angle because it's greater than 90 but less than 180.
All right then, now we've got a bit of a handle on the angles. What are we going to do next?
OK, we're going to look at the properties of these angles on a straight line and around a point. And we can use this clock here to help us. It's common for teachers to talk about the properties of an angle.
Yeah, what is the properties of an angle?
Well, the properties is just the maths term for basically the facts. So what facts do we know about these angles? Let's look at this clock face We're going to try and calculate the angles of specific times, taking into account the properties or facts that we know about them already.
So shall we get the 4 angles back on the screen to help us with this before we take on this challenge? So how do we compare the two?
So Gethin, let's look at the angle between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. From the properties that we know already, what is this angle?
That immediately looks like 90 degrees to me, so that's a right angle.
Excellent. Well, how about if we turn this to 6 p.m.?
3 o'clock to 6 p.m. That's just a straight line.
It's a straight line, and therefore what we know about the number of degrees on a straight line is that it's always 180 degrees.
Do you have another one for us?
Now, this next one's a bit trickier. Measuring clockwise, what is this angle?
11 o'clock, well, it's quite small to me, so I'm going to say that's an acute angle.
It's actually reflex, but I can see what you did there. Remember, reflex is more than 180, but less than 360, which is a full circle, and we were moving clockwise.
Yes, that's where I went wrong. I went anti-clockwise instead of clockwise. I've got it now. OK, thank you very much, Miss Hussain. Remember, if you're angling for more or want to put your skills to the test, just head over to the BBC Bitesize website where you'll find stuff like this. It's now time for our Big Read feature. Every day this week, we'll be listening to extracts from Kim Slater's brilliant and moving book, A 7-Letter Word. Now, this is a vivid and heartfelt story of 14-year-old Finley. He suffers from a stutter, and in the past 2 years, this has become unbearable. In the opening chapter, we meet Finley for the first time, and in an attempt to get all the words that are in his head down on paper, Finley is writing a letter to his mum. Our celeb reader this week is literary royalty. He's a master of language, a writer, an actor, comedian. The list goes on, and I'm so excited to tell you it's none other than the amazing Mr. Stephen Fry.
A 7-Letter Word by Kim Slater. Monday, 11th of May. Dear Mum, it's me, Finley. I've had this brilliant idea to empty out all the words in my head onto paper. That way they might stop driving me bonkers, buzzing around with no way of getting out. I'm writing in the journal I found in the box of your things that I managed to save from Dad's manic fumigation 16 session when you left. I hope you don't mind. You never wrote anything in it. Seeing as I'm using your journal, I thought it made sense that I write directly to you. For starters, I know you'll appreciate the Scrabble scores I'm giving for the best words. I practice every day, just like you taught me, and my vocabulary is improving all the time. I've come on a lot since we used to play together. Wish I could show you, Mum. I think you'd be proud. Of course, I didn't have to write to you. I know that. I could have wrote to, well, anybody really, but I don't know that many people since we moved house.
You really feel sorry for Finley, don't you? It must be so difficult to have all these thoughts running around in your head, but not be able to vocalise them. Well, to discuss the extract in more detail, we have English whiz Miss Longsdale with us. Let's talk about Finley from today's extract. What do we actually learn about him?
Yeah, so the author is really clever in the way that she makes us question several things, because we know that Finley is writing to his mum, but we don't know why he's having to do that or where she is.
That's the first thing that sprung to my mind, actually, because I was thinking, why would he be writing to his mum? Is she on holiday? Have they fallen out? Or are they no longer living together because his parents have separated?
Right, and that's great that you're asking those questions, because that's what the author wants you to consider in that opening extract. The point you make about his parents no longer being together is a really good one, because Finley talks about rescuing his mum's journal from Dad's manic fumigation. And this suggests that his mum may have left his dad. Perhaps things weren't that straightforward.
OK, that kind of makes sense. So I also get the feeling as well, you get the feeling from reading the book, that Finley's quite lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's speaking in first person. We find out that he misses his mum. The extract makes us wonder whether or not she's been in touch or, you know, whether she's still part of his life. The part where it says he moved into a new house with his dad, but he doesn't know many people, really strengthens that idea.
There's lots to consider with this book, isn't there? And if you want to find out more before tomorrow, check out your local library online to find the audio or e-book. Reading is such a great way to boost your learning, vocabulary, and it's a brilliant way to relax. Now, Miss Lonsdale is hanging around as we move on to some more English. Right then, Miss Lonsdale, what are we looking at today?
So today we're going to be looking at style models and how we can use them to help structure our writing.
What is a style model?
A style model is a really good example of a piece of writing, perhaps even a professional example.
So now we know what it is, how or why do we need a style model for writing?
Well, if you think about it, there are lots of different types of writing, formal, informal, fiction, persuasive writing, and there are many places that we can see those types of writing, so magazine articles, books, comics, magazines. So depending on the purpose of our writing, we need to think about how our page will look, headings that we need to use, the language that we'll be using, and a style model will help with that.
As always, loads to think about. So this is like a bit of a checklist in a way to make sure you're including all the relevant things that you need for your piece of writing.
That's it, that's exactly it. And thinking about the page layout, the genre, headings, and the type of language that you need to use before you begin writing is really going to help you focus on the type of piece that you want to write. If you write a great article in your local newspaper, for example, on the importance of exercise at school, but it's just text on a blank page, will anybody want to read it?
OK, so how do you improve that? What do you need to do?
Well, if you have all the right ingredients, then your piece will really hit the spot. It's not always about the words themselves, it's about how you present the package,
Right,
and
okay.
a style model will help you nail the conventions of that.
Do we need a style model then for every piece of writing that we do?
So an interview with your favourite band in a music magazine would use different conventions to a broadsheet newspaper, for example.
See what you mean. OK, well, thank you for now. If this has caught your interest and you want to start thinking about the purpose of a piece of writing, like how to put an argument together and what a style model for this might be, check this out and a whole lot of other things on the BBC Bitesize website.
We are backstage at Argument Corner with our first contestant. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Our audiences at home would like to learn effective ways to build a written argument. Could you walk us through how you did it?
Sure. Firstly, always begin with a clear and direct main point.
Let's take a look at your argument against animal testing.
Testing products on animals is absolutely wrong, for both moral and environmental reasons.
That's pretty clear and direct. Let's look at how you followed that up.
To begin, these products could have terrible effects. The testing can cripple or even kill the poor animals.
This statement supports your main point.
Exactly. The heart of your argument should support your main point and use good evidence to persuade readers to agree.
And why say to begin?
That's called a discourse marker. Phrases like that help hold the argument together and help signpost to readers as to where you are in the argument.
I see. Let's get back to the argument.
The testing also harms the environment. Often captured from the wild, these animals may leave behind innocent, defenseless babies. This can have consequences for the entire food chain.
I really felt that point.
Good. I wanted you to respond emotionally So I mention baby animals and use words like defenseless and innocent. That's called emotive language.
Nothing cuter than baby animals, but I'm curious about your last point.
Supporters of testing will tell you that it is well regulated to protect the animals, but in fact, testing regulations differ from country to country, and corporations can choose to test wherever the laws suit them.
I was surprised to see you bring in the counter-argument.
Understandably, but doing so allowed me to challenge the argument on my own terms.
Which you did superbly.
Right, this is our pick of the day, and we're time travelling back in history. We're heading back to the Elizabethan age to take a closer look at Queen Elizabeth I and what we can learn about her from looking at archive material. But before we start, here's a quick reminder of who she was and when she reigned. Are you ready for this? I've learned it all. Ready? Let's go. Elizabeth I was Queen of England, Ireland and Wales between 1558 and 1603. In that time, she ruled alone and didn't marry, so although she was queen, there was no king. This made her reign challenging, as some people felt that only men should be rulers at the time, but Elizabeth had other ideas. In this next clip, we explore how archive of this powerful queen helps us understand the image she wanted to project to the public.
Take Elizabeth I, for example. She became queen in 1558 and is celebrated for a glorious reign lasting 44 years. But what made Elizabeth tick? To find out, we'll examine two sources that portray very different sides of her character. Where better to start than one of Elizabeth I's great seals? We have one here and it's beautifully preserved, it's in fantastic condition. Now, all monarchs would have had these. They're their official image, the image they want to project to people. Great seals were attached to important documents. They were made out of beeswax from a special mould, so they were extremely difficult to forge. If we take a closer look, we can see that in her hands she's holding an orb and a sceptre. Now, the orb represents her spiritual power, her God-given power, if you like, and the sceptre represents her power on earth, so her power over laws, over her army. This source from 1586 shows Elizabeth I at the height of her power. In this image, she's an all-powerful ruler, anointed by God.
Yeah, interesting that, isn't it? And just like many celebs today, Elizabeth I controlled her image very carefully. She portrayed the image of girl power, both spiritually and lawfully, to make sure she was seen as a powerful leader. These days, it would be done by photo shoots, interviews, and social media campaigns to create the brand. But back then, as the archive shows, this was done by art, such as the royal seal. The image that Elizabeth I wanted to project during her time as queen is reflected by what she achieved. She wanted to be known for her triumphs, like being responsible for Sir Francis Drake's circumnavigation of the globe, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, and funding the plays of the late, great William Shakespeare. She achieved a lot, didn't she? And of course, if you want to know more about this powerful queen, you know where to go. Yes, it's the BBC Bitesize website. Well, that's it for all you awesome 11 and 12-year-olds. Hope that's boosted your brain cells. But remember, the learning doesn't stop here. That was just a taster of what's available to you on the BBC Bitesize website. And don't worry if you came late to the party. You can catch up on BBC iPlayer. Just search Bitesize. And now, before we go, some words of wisdom from our trusty in-house doctor. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Hello, just a quick reminder from me, Dr. Rada, that getting active and exercising actually does make you cleverer. So, really important to keep across your studies, but make sure you squeeze in that power walk or that workout in your front room. Whatever your thing is, do it. You'll be glad you did.
Hello to all you 12 and 13-year-olds across the UK. Welcome to Bitesize Daily. Now, I hope you're ready and raring to go, because we've got a show packed full of amazing facts creative content and cool fiction to help you ace your schoolwork. Here's what's coming up on today's show. It's Motivational Monday to set you up for the week ahead. Our first subject of the day is maths, and we're angling for all sorts of angles. After that, it's the big read and the very first instalment of Welcome to Nowhere. Then it's English with Miss Lonsdale and some great tips for planning your writing. And to top it all off, we're heading back in time to the Civil War for history. Welcome to another Motivational Monday here on Bitesize Daily Secondary. Now, we're going to try and lift your spirits and send you soaring into the start of another week. You might be getting a bit of cabin fever, being indoors a lot, looking at the same four walls all the time. Well, YouTube sensation Coyote Damali shares your pain, but fear not, because he's here with some words of wisdom to keep you smiling.
Okay, so the million-dollar question right now, or should I say the million-pound question right now, is how do we stay positive during these strange times? And man, I get it. I know it is not easy. Now, I hold my hands up. I've even struggled some days myself. Like, I can't even get a haircut right now. But here's the thing that we need to realize. We need to understand that where our attention goes, energy flows. Meaning that if we focus on the negative, we're much more likely to be negative, which means that the reverse is also true, meaning that if we focus on the positive, we're much more likely to get positive outcomes. So what are the positive things in your life happening right now? Don't consume too much negative information. Understand this situation right now is temporary. It's not going to last forever. Yes, things might be strange or hard right now, but trust me, your days will soon be getting better.
It is time to explore the first subject of the day. It's maths, and let's give a warm bite-sized welcome to the calculator queen, our numerical know-it-all, the one and only Miss Hussein. It's lovely to see you, Miss Hussein.
Thank you.
What are we going to be doing today?
OK, we're going to be having a go at understanding angle sizes.
All about angles today. So before we get going, let's look at some of the important things you guys need to know. Now, make sure you're watching from every angle. See what I did there? Yeah, I won't do any more jokes. I'm not on a roll, am I?
How to estimate and measure angles. To estimate the size of the angle, think about counting in quarter turns, or 90-degree angles. This angle is about halfway between 0 and 90 degrees, an acute angle. So we can estimate that it's approximately 45 degrees. This angle is about 2/3 of 180 degrees, so we can approximate that to be 120 degrees. But for a more precise measurement, we can use a protractor. Make sure that the center of the protractor is over the vertex or corner of the angle, that the baseline is along one of the lines or legs of the angle, and always remember to read from 0. So this angle is 65 degrees. And remember, if the angle you are measuring is facing left, use the outer scale for your reading.
OK, Miss Hussein, what have you got in store for us?
We are going to be looking at estimating the size of angles. I'm going to kick this off with a question.
What, straight off the bat? I've not even prepared, but OK, what's the question?
We use a protractor to measure angles, but why does it have 2 scales on it?
I don't know. Why does it have 2 scales on it?
The 2 scales make it easy for us to measure angles facing different ways. The trick is to remember that if the angle opens from the left, you use the numbers starting from 0 from the left. If the angle starts from the right, you use the right-hand numbers starting from 0 from the right.
OK, that makes sense. Are there examples in the real world in terms of jobs people do where it's good to use a protractor?
Well, you might not know this, but a lot of design jobs require the use of a protractor. If, for example, an architect is designing the main entrance to a new building and the doors open from the right to the left, we would use the numbers starting from 0 from the right-hand side of the protractor to measure the angle of the open doors.
OK, how would you kind of show that in the classroom?
Well, I've got a little challenge for you.
Love a challenge? What is it? Tell me.
Here is your name in capital letters. I'm going to point to an angle in your name and I want you to estimate the size.
Estimate the size? What do you mean by estimate?
Estimate means to make a mathematically logical guess. It's what us top mathematicians do every day.
OK.
Have a go at estimating the size of this angle.
I'm going to say, because it's that and that, then you've probably got 90 degrees, is it?
Let's check by measuring the angle using a protractor. That's right, it is 90 degrees, which is known as a right angle. And if you twist the top of the E to the left, you can see that it's a quarter turn, which is the same as a 90-degree angle. Let's get more acute now and really test your brain.
Go on, then.
If this angle is 90 degrees, then what is the size of the angle on the outside of the E?
The whole way round. Well, the whole way round is 360 degrees, so I presume you take away the 90, which leaves you with 270 degrees.
Correct. It's 270 degrees. Well done. If a quarter turn is 90 degrees, then the other side must be 270 degrees. This is because 270 plus 90 equals 360 degrees.
360 degrees, a full turn. I think I remember that one. Thank you so much, Miss Hussain, for sharing your mathematical genius with us. And I'm sure all our viewers at home will be angling to estimate the angles in their name too, maybe. We've run out of maths time today, but to expand your brain even more, visit bbc.co.uk/bitesize. It's that easy. And we're now going to take a visual look at the concept of angles in relation to 360 days, not quite a year. And what else is 360 on it? That's right, your protractor. Don't tell me you've put it away already. Exciting news coming your way right now. It's time for today's big read, and this week our reader is the one and only West End star Leighton Williams, who'll be reading from Elizabeth Laird's Welcome to Nowhere. Now, this book tells the story of Omar and his family who are caught up in civil war in Syria. In today's extract, we learn about Omar's memories of his hometown of Bosra and how it's changed over time. Leighton, over to you.
My hometown is a brilliant place. Was a brilliant place, I suppose I ought to say. It's called Bosra and it's in Syria. It's not too big so you can't get lost. And in the middle of the town, there's a huge tumbled down city of ruins. Whole streets, temples, a theatre, you name it. Tourists used to come from all over the world to see Bosra. Personally, if I'd had their money, I'd have gone somewhere cool like Dubai or New York or London. But then I'm not crazy about history. Looking back now, those days in Bosra seem like a sort of dream. Everything was ordinary and peaceful. My father worked in the tourism office, a sort of government job, and Ma did everything at home. What with school and my two jobs, I was busy all day, running to keep up. My early job, 5 till 7 in the morning, was in Uncle Ali's hardware store. Baba, my father, made me do that one. Then there was school until 1 p.m, home to gobble down my lunch, and I was off to work at the ruins with my cousin, Razul.
Yeah, it's a moving read, isn't it? And to help us explore it more, it's none other than English Supremo, Miss Lonsdale. What do we learn about Omar and his life from this extract?
Well, we learn a lot. Omar is a young boy living in Bosra in Syria, and one of the key points that the author's trying to get across is that the town has changed a lot. There's a deliberate change of tense in Omar's introduction. My hometown is a brilliant place, was a brilliant place, and this suggests that something's happened to change Omar's life in Bosra.
Yeah, that's quite clever writing, isn't it? It makes me feel like he's looking back at happier times. Would that be right?
Yeah, I mean, whatever has happened, it wasn't always like that. And Omar says, looking back now, these days in Bosra seem like a sort of dream. Everything was ordinary and peaceful. We can tell that he's pining for the way that things were, and by using that abstract noun, dream, it shows that something very serious has happened since then.
And what about Omar's family and the roles they're playing at this time?
Well, you get the feeling that Omar's family didn't have a great deal of money. Omar himself had 2 jobs around his schooling, 5 till 7 in the morning in the hardware store with his uncle, and then on the ruins after school with Rasul.
Working 2 jobs and working so hard, that's quite unique for a boy that age, isn't it?
Absolutely, but he doesn't have a choice. He has to do that work in the hardware store, and he says, Baba, my father, made me do that one. This is the author telling us that he must work to help provide for his family alongside his dad's income.
It's a lot for him to take on. And by the way, if you can't wait for the next extract and want to carry on learning about Omar's journey, there are plenty of online libraries to find the audio and ebook. And if this story is not for you, then there are hundreds of other stories to choose from. Stay tuned tomorrow when Leighton will be back to read more. It's now time for our second subject of the day. It's English, which means Miss Lonsdale is here to talk us through all the important stuff. What's going on today?
Today, we're going to be analysing style models and looking at the language. So first, we need to look closely to see what kind of language is used. Is it formal or is it informal in its tone?
What do you mean by tone when it comes to writing?
So it's not what you're writing, but it's the mood and how you write it that's important. So if the language written is formal, that's standard English, like you'd see in a news article written in a broadsheet newspaper. If it's informal, the language written feels more conversational, like a blog post, which might have some slang in it.
OK, so there's a big difference between the two.
That's it. And by analysing the language in a style model, we can look at the vocabulary the writer uses and decide whether the tone is informal or formal.
Anything else we need to consider?
Yeah, so 2 more things that are really important to consider. Does the language speak to the reader directly? And are the sentences short and concise or longer form? Both of those points impact on the tone of the writing.
You love a list, don't you?
Love
That's
a list.
2 things. There you go. Shall we put some writing under the microscope to explain more?
Yes.
How do we do that? What are we going to do?
I'm excited for this.
Okay.
So I've written a piece of writing. I'm going to read it out. And then you're going to read a different piece of writing that I've also written, and then we're going to analyse it.
OK, what's it about? Why have you chosen this particular subject?
Well, it was an obvious choice. I had to choose something that I thought the students at home would be interested in. Thinking of my students, they tell me they love sleep. That's what I've gone with. So we've gone with sleep. I hope that's all right.
All right, then, you're up first.
OK. My posh voice. Sleep is a prerequisite for healthy growth and a linchpin of sanity. It is fundamental for juveniles to experience a non-negotiable minimum of 8 to 10 hours per evening if they are to excel in their studies and perform optimally in both prosaic and arduous tasks.
I think I'm glad you got that bit.
I know, I had to breathe. Gosh.
All right, my turn then. Here we go. This is what you've written for me. I don't just like sleep, I love sleep. I need sleep, and lots of it. And I'm not just talking about your standard 8 hours of an evening. I'm talking about cat naps, siestas, and catching 40 winks mid-afternoon. Who even decided that sleep should only happen at night? Anyway, not me. I actually believe in all of that. I think it's
That
good.
was brilliant. You did a good job. So shall we do a quick fire quiz then to compare those 2 pieces of writing?
Absolutely.
And I hope you lot at home are paying attention too. So which piece of writing was formal and which one do you think was informal?
Well, yours was more formal for sure. Mine felt quite fun and informal. I was laughing whilst I was saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So which then spoke to the reader directly, do you think?
Mine spoke to the reader directly. I think yours was addressing, like you said, like a broadsheet. It was almost like, I don't know, it felt far away.
Absolutely, that's really good. The vocabulary, what did you think about the choices of vocabulary?
It felt like you had swallowed a dictionary and mine was probably a bit more easy to understand.
Yeah, that's it. Mine had lots of complex words.
Yeah.
The sentence types, how do you think that they differed? And the lengths of the sentences too?
Again, yours were long, descriptive sentences, whereas mine were short, concise, and to the point. I'm saying that to a teacher.
So can you see how analysing the language that's in a style model can help us write in different or similar styles?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really interesting stuff, that, actually. And that's it, unfortunately, for English. To check out what we've been talking about today and to look at loads of other brilliant stuff, head on over to the BBC Bitesize website. Go on, get more involved. You know you want to. So you 12 and 13-year-olds, we're hanging out together one more time today, and what better way to end our learning marathon than with a slice of juicy history for our final subject of the day. We are going on a journey to explore the path to the Civil War between 1625 and 1642. When I say path, it's more of like a long, winding, difficult road, to be honest. Now, Charles I came to the throne in 1625, but his relationship with Parliament was frosty from the very start. There were clashes about foreign policy. He married a French Catholic woman against their wishes, and all this sent Parliament into a right spin. The arguments continued, reviving old laws and taxes, which he called ship money without their agreement. And when they complained in 1629, he dismissed Parliament, meaning he basically ran the country without them until 1640. This period is known as the 11-year tyranny. OK, war with Scotland forced Charles to recall Parliament in 1641, but instead of granting him the money to go to war, they sent him a list of 204 complaints about how he was running the country. One of the most destructive periods in British history was about to follow.
I'm standing outside Parliament, where the country is ruled from today. But we should remember that it took brutal civil war, fought by men here, like Oliver Cromwell, to establish the power of Parliament and to make sure that monarchs respected that power.
The civil wars of the 1640s were perhaps the most violent and destructive episodes in British history. This was a struggle between King Charles I and Parliament over how and in whose interests the country should be governed.
Yes, so the continuous battle between Parliament and Charles I had finally come to a head over three main things: religion, money, and power. And when MPs, members of Parliament, refused to allow him to lead the army against a Catholic rebellion in Ireland, King Charles tried to arrest 5 MPs who criticised him, but they escaped. Parliament then took control of the army and introduced even more demands. The whole country was taking sides. A brutal civil war was about to follow, along with a fight to establish power. Now, I'm going to halt this historical tale right now, as that's all we've got time for today. But if you want to check out more about the Civil War and loads of other content, head over to the BBC Bitesize website for more brilliant resources to support you through your studies. So that's your lot, 12 and 13-year-olds. And if you want to watch this back or suggest it to your friends, you'll find us on BBC iPlayer, and Bob's your uncle. And by the way, if Bob is your uncle, hello, Bob. But before we go, here's our resident doctor with some top tips to keep you smiling.
Just a little reminder from me, Dr. Ryder, that exercise is a super useful thing and it can help you establish a routine right now. So whether or not it's a jump around in the morning before you start your work, a lunchtime break, or even something after you finish your studies in the evening, just as a big stress buster, to shake off the whole day, then do it. It will really, really help you.
Now, some might say we've saved the best till last because it's time for our final part of the show for all you 13 and 14-year-olds out there. And to get those brains buzzing, we've got some brilliant stuff heading your way. Here's what's coming up on today's show. Coming up, it's a Motivational Monday with words of wisdom from the one and only Katie Thistleton. Our first subject of the day is maths, and it's all about angles and fangles. Fangles? You'll find out soon. Then it's time for The Bodyguard in the Big Read, followed by English with the fabulous Miss Lonsdale. And to top it all off, we're going back in time with history, 1641 to be precise. Today on Bitesize Daily Secondary, it's Motivational Monday. Now, we're kicking off in style to send you smiling into the rest of the week, hopefully. And who better to raise your spirits than our very own Katie Thistleton, with some brilliant tips on how to combat being cooped up indoors all the time, from staying in touch with family and friends to embracing some good old fresh air. Katie, over to you.
Hello, Katie Thistleton here from Radio 1 and Bitesize Daily, and these are my top tips for Monday motivation, particularly for combating cabin fever. We're all stuck in our houses at the moment and it can feel a little bit annoying staring at the same four walls. So one of my tips is to, when you get up in the morning, open your curtains so that your bedroom is nice and bright. Maybe go into the garden if you can. I took my exercise bike into the garden today and did a workout out there, and that was really nice. Or if you don't have a garden, just go and sit by the window and read a book so that you're looking out at the outside world. Also, FaceTime or video call some friends and family members that you're not able to see at the moment. That'll just remind you that they're there and that you can still communicate with them. And also, a great thing to do is when you get up in the morning, have your brekkie, but then go and brush your teeth and wash your face or have your shower. I'm really bad at doing that when I've got a day off. Sometimes I'll find it's early afternoon and I'm still in my pyjamas. But if you do get up and wash your face, brush your teeth, you're up then, you're awake, aren't you? You're ready to take on the day. And I think that can help you stop feeling like you're too cooped up and you're just sort of slobbing around, which sometimes we all do like to do. Good luck!
It's time for our first subject of the day, and what a way to start, but with maths. Let me introduce you to our mega maths whiz, Miss Hussain. Do you get a cheer like that when you walk in the classroom at school?
No.
No, I don't think you do. So what type of maths are we looking at today?
We're going to delve deep into angles today.
Delving deep into angles, it sounds good to me. But before we jump straight into the detail, let's have a look at some of the things we need to know on this subject.
Parallel lines and alternate and corresponding angles. Parallel lines are straight lines that are always an equal distance apart, or equidistant, and so they never meet. In maths, parallel lines are indicated with arrows. A line which crosses a pair of parallel lines is called a transversal. Where the transversal crosses either parallel line, it creates a pair of vertically opposite angles, which are equal. Alternate angles are equal angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal. Corresponding angles are equal angles that are on the same side of the transversal. And co-interior angles, on the other hand, always add up to 180 degrees.
What are we looking at now, Miss Hussain?
We are going to look at parallel lines and how this links in with the angles around them.
OK, great. Let's get to it then.
A bit of trivia to kick off. Where might you find parallel lines in real life?
Parallel lines, I have parallel lines on my front gate.
Good. You might also see them on train tracks, in brickwork, and within architecture.
Tell us about parallel lines.
Parallel lines are actually two lines that never cross and are always the same distance apart.
OK, so that's got me thinking, actually, with our TV set here, I suppose there are a lot of parallel lines.
Yes, the opposite edges of this TV are parallel. If we're being really smart, which we are, we could say that there are two pairs of parallel lines on this TV. There is a horizontal pair and a vertical pair.
All right, I am with you.
Now, let's really get your mind working. Have you ever heard of bangles?
You're putting an F before an angle, fangles. No, tell me.
Well, if you want to be a proper maths boffin and impress your friends, they are really called corresponding angles.
Fangles are corresponding angles. OK, explain more.
OK. When two lines are crossed by another line, the angles in matching corners are called corresponding angles, or bangles.
Right.
Let me explain using the image on screen to help us. In this picture, there is a pair of parallel lines with a straight line crossing them. We call this line the transversal. We can use the transversal to create F shapes, or fangles. These are angles that look a bit like an F shape. The angles on the inside of the F shapes are pairs of corresponding angles and are equal to each other.
So if I got out my protractor and measured the pairs of corresponding angles, would they measure the same?
Yes, exactly. Corresponding angles, or fangles, are always equal. Right, Gethin, put your best thinking cap on and get ready for a brain teaser.
The cap is on. I'm ready.
OK, if fangles makes an F shape, what do you think zangles make?
I'm going to say a Z shape.
Correct.
I think I've got this now, actually, and I hope you have too. Thank you so much for your mathematical expertise, Miss Hussain. That's it for maths. To test your zangles from your fangles, and for loads more content, check out the BBC Bitesize website. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. Do we have a drum roll? We do. It's time for the big read, and today we've got a treat in store for you. It's none other than Watford FC goal machine, Troy Deeney. Now, he's reading from The Bodyguard by Chris Bradford. This introduces us to a far from ordinary 14-year-old Connor Reeves, who's about to face the most challenging test of his life. He's a bodyguard, and the story begins with a prologue and tells us how it all began with Connor's dad's story. Interesting. Over to you, Troy.
The bodyguard alone remained impassive, strapped into the front passenger seat, his MP5 submachine gun across his lap. He survived this run many times. Not that that made the drive any easier. Less than 12 kilometres long, this sweeping Mendham Road was the sole artery that connected Baghdad International Airport to the Green Zone, the fortress-like military and governmental safe haven in the heart of Baghdad. Any attempt to travel the route was little more than a suicidal dash.
So to help us delve into today's extract and explain more, it's the queen of descriptive language and our ace English teacher, Miss Lonsdale. I know you love a good introduction, so there it was.
Thank you.
What impressions do we get of Iraq during today's big read?
Yeah, so the author really sets the scene with the words hellish images of war-torn Iraq, which gives us a snapshot of the devastation that's happening across the landscape. There are a lot of descriptive examples used, so that helps us visualise that image in our minds.
It's so traumatic, isn't it? And the journey itself seems really dangerous for the passengers on board.
Absolutely. Well, it is a war zone and the passengers' lives are definitely at risk. The journey's taking place in a route that sees barren patches of garbage-strewn desert, burnt-out carcasses of abandoned vehicles and crumbling buildings pockmarked with bullet holes. It suggests that this has been going on for quite some time, and the author's painting the picture that Iraq is dangerous and a terrifying place to be.
You can almost picture the children's faces, can't you?
Absolutely, and it's extremely hard-hitting. The haunted faces of Iraqi children scavenging among the rubble conjures up the real image of young children scarred by war. So the author uses the verb scavenging to suggest that they are searching for food, and their faces are haunted, which leaves a real lasting impression.
Yeah, the story builds and builds, doesn't it? And by the way, we'll be back tomorrow with another extract of this. But if you can't wait until then and want to find out what happens next in The Bodyguard, check out your local library online to find the audio or ebook. And if this story's not for you, that's okay. There are loads more to choose from. We're on to our second subject of the day. It's English, and Miss Lonsdale is here to share her wisdom. So what have you got in store for us today?
OK, so today we're going to be looking at how to plan an article. Articles can be feature articles or news articles.
What's the difference between the two then?
Yeah, it's tricky. So articles feature in lots of different print and online formats, from newspapers, magazines and websites. News articles are at the front of a newspaper reporting current affairs, whereas feature articles are towards the back. They're more opinionated and often detailed.
Gotcha. OK, how do we get started with this then?
So firstly, as always, it's important to write a plan so you can organise your ideas in a logical order. 3 reasons to write a plan. 1, to save you time and stop you writing about what isn't important. 2, to remind you what to include as you're going through. And lastly, 3rd, it helps you organise your ideas.
Right, OK, so first up, what have we got? What we're going to do?
OK, so we've got our style model first of all, which means using a good or perhaps even professional example as a bit of inspiration.
Yeah.
So if your favourite blogger recently posted an article, you could use that as a bit of a guide, and then you can include some things that they have.
All right, and do we need to do anything with words? Are there different styles for an article?
That's it. So vocabulary is always important in English. So you might choose to use formal, informal vocabulary, descriptive, informative, or even a mixture.
Yeah, there's always so much to think about, isn't there? What else?
Language features. So with our articles, you might want to make your writing interesting using alliteration. BBC Bitesize is bold and brilliant.
Very good, very topical, like that.
Thank you very much.
Nice. Yeah.
Or onomatopoeia, you might use snap, bang, crackle, pop.
Yeah, good words.
Thank you.
And what else?
A timeline.
Yeah.
So that's really important to sequence your ideas so that they're in order, and as you move through your article, it's seamless and it's logical.
What other techniques do we need to think about when writing an article?
Yeah, so for the timeline section, which I've mentioned, you can track that through your article. And this simple grid will help you with your structure. So you've got 4 questions at the top here to help you. What happened? How did it happen? How did people react? And what's next?
So can you use this for a news article and a feature article?
Absolutely, because if you're writing a news article, you can say what happened at that time, how it happened, etc. And for a feature article, you need to include similar details.
OK. I was thinking about writing an article on the length of my beard at the moment. Would you read that? Would that be something of interest?
Right. It's an odd topic, but I'll check it for spellings if you like.
That's a diplomatic answer, isn't it? Thank you very much. That is it for English today. Test out your article planning, and there's much more on the BBC Bitesize website. And now we're going to visit someone who's up against a tight deadline and struggling to structure and write an effective article. Does that sound familiar?
OK, so it's like almost midnight, and I've got to write this article that persuades people that... Wait for it. The paperclip changed the world. And my deadline, 8 a.m. sharp. My head's spinning. I think it needs to be informal, chatty, because my readers are young people. But...
Hey, our world would literally fall apart without paperclips.
That's it. I've cracked.
No, Baz, my friend, you are still perfectly sane. I will help you with the article.
But you're a...
Yes, a supple, dancing paperclip. Never seen one before? You can write this article easy. It needs to be about a simple technology. I am a technology. Simple, but very clever.
Yeah, but...
But nothing, friend. You're going to persuade your readers that I am indeed vital to modern life. This article needs to be short, to the point, and informative. But it's also a fun idea, so your language can be informal, yes?
OK.
Do it! Do it!
Last but by no means least, it's our final subject of the day, history. And today we're going to look at whether the Civil War in 1641 was inevitable or could it have been avoided? Now, it depends on which way you look at it. So some historians believe that the issues of power, money and religion meant it was always going to happen. But others blame King Charles's stubborn personality and how he was never willing to compromise with Parliament. Some also believe that MPs, members of Parliament, went too far and the king was pushed into a corner and had no choice. But what do you think? To help you make up your mind, here's a whistle-stop tour of the power struggle that will stop you battling and bring you up to speed with the Civil War.
This is the story of a stubborn king who clashed with his parliament and lost his head along the way. Careless. Charles I became king in 1625 and soon made himself very popular with Parliament by A, marrying a French Catholic and B, collecting unpopular taxes. When the MPs complained, he upped sticks, closed Parliament and sent them home. Charles believed he had divine right, which meant his right to rule came straight from God. But he hit a bit of a snag in closing Parliament. Because it was closed, it couldn't grant him funds, so he had to come up with another money-making scheme. He decided to revive old taxes, usually reserved for wartime. Next on Charles' to-do list was religion. He started by making the church more Catholic. Not content with that, he then tried to make the Scots use the English prayer book. The Scots refused, so he declared war.
Oh, yeah.
Now, wars are pretty expensive things, and Charles needed more money. So he cracked and recalled Parliament in 1640. The first day back must have been pretty awkward.
Hi guys, I'm gonna need some money.
And things went from bad to worse. Instead of granting him money, Parliament demanded more powers and seized control of the army. Obviously on a roll, it didn't stop there. In June 1642, Parliament issued a list of demands about how the king should behave. That was it for Charles. He was sure of his divine right to rule, and he wasn't about to have these mere mortals bossing him about. A civil war erupted between Parliament and the king.
Let's have your end.
One of the most shocking things about this time in history was that there was no real enemy and the people in the country were basically fighting amongst themselves. It's crazy, isn't it? The two sides couldn't negotiate or come to an agreement, so instead they went to war. One final argument is that the Civil War was almost an accident and it didn't become inevitable until 1641, when the Grand Remonstrance, now this is a list of 204 complaints MPs sent to the king on how he was running the country, tipped him over the edge. Civil War was then declared. Some interesting arguments around the Civil War. That's all we've got time for today, but if you're still hungry for more about this, then visit the BBC Bitesize website, where you'll find more facts, evidence and arguments to help you decide. That's everything from us today, so thank you to you 13 and 14-year-olds for joining in with all the learning. Now, I'll be back tomorrow with some more special guests and fantastic new content just for you. And if you've missed anything in today's show, it's available on iPlayer for you to watch. It's easy to find, just search Bitesize. Let us know how you're getting on using hashtag BBC Bitesize Daily, and I hope we've helped you feel positive about your schoolwork for the day ahead. There's one thing left to do, and that's a message from our very own in-house doctor.
Hiya, Dr. Ryder with just a quick reminder for you. It's super important to keep on top of your studies and your schoolwork right now, but it's just as important to get active, move your body to feel better. We know that a healthy body equals a healthy mind. Our mind and body are not separate from each other. So whatever you fancy doing, if it's in your garden, your kitchen, your living room, get up, get moving, get active, get your heart rate going, and I promise you, you'll feel better and you won't regret it.
Last March, the shutters came down on normal life as the UK entered its first national lockdown.
A year on, we'll speak to decision makers, experts and frontline workers to make sense of what's happened and to ask, what now?
Join us for Lockdown Live, What Next? Tomorrow at 7 on BBC One.